Good morning, Laura.
Good morning. Let's see. Where are you, Brian? Okay. Oh, crap. Oh, you're in. There you are. Okay, great. You're muted though.
There we go.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, was
I
you?
think I'm realizing that maybe Jade didn't send out a text over the weekend for classes, so I'm going to run over there right now and say something to her. But so since you logged in under our account, you can you're a co-host already, so you should be all set to share your screen. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
Okay, and you got the presentation that I sent you?
I do. Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Good morning. So I'm going to jump on the leadership call that I need to be on, Brian, and I'll be
Okay.
in the background if you need me, but if you could just, introduce yourself and that sort of stuff, that'd be awesome. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're on your own for the most part. Okay?
Okay, sounds
Thank
good.
you.
No problem. All right. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. All right. Let me just get this thing set up here.
And Brian, it usually takes a few minutes for people to jump on, but please
Okay.
start on time. It just, you know how it goes. People jump on in like the first 5 minutes. Okay?
No problem. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Of course. All right. Let me just get this thing set up so I can actually, where'd my Zoom go? Here we go. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Okay. Okay, so you should see the slideshow now, and you shouldn't see all of my notes that make it a lot more confusing. Is that what you're seeing right now? I got two screens up, so I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you're right.
You're good. Okay, perfect. Sounds good. All right, well, I'll give it a minute just to see if anybody else does pop in today. It looks like we've got a little bit of a smaller group today. When we go through the course, there's a lot of stuff in here that's going to be more specific to command, and it's some stuff that we don't necessarily quite use yet, at least here in our market. We're not writing offers typically right through command in the way that it's going to talk about. So some of those sections I'm going to kind of skip over, and I'll take you to car forms. A lot of you will have already seen that, but it'll just be a quick review to let people know where to find these documents. So we'll make sure to do that as well. And then being that we're going to be skipping a few parts, I think we're probably going to come in right at an hour, maybe a little bit less. So with that said, if you have any questions throughout any of it, when I'm sharing my screen, it's very difficult for me to see the chat. So if you do see somebody that's written a question into the chat, if you could just let me know, or somebody can just kind of ask that question, or better yet, if you have the ability, just go ahead and interrupt me, totally fine. I want to make sure that everybody gets what they are looking for out of this today. So I think most of you.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Can you introduce yourself too?
Yeah, absolutely. So
okay,
most of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think a lot of you I've probably met at least virtually before. My name's Brian Porter. I'm out of the Gateway office. I've been there for 5 years, which it was also the beginning of my career. So started in real estate in 2015. Came from paramedic background, so at the beginning, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, no clue how to build a business, which is why I joined KW in the first place, just because I'd already read Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and I think I'd read The One Thing, I'd read some of his investment books as well, and I just realized this company really has it together with regard to high-level training and kind of just the get you started training, which is similar to what we're looking at today. And so I joined KW with the idea that if I just follow the models that I'm being given by the company through these courses, that's what's going to kickstart my career. And it worked really well. I was able to basically take over my paramedic income within the first maybe 8 or 9 months, something like that. And then I went full time from there. So that's my background. I have my door knocking shirt on today. That's how I built my business. So, I always tell everybody, if you want to be successful in this business, everyone always talks about how only a small percentage of people make it and all that. I think that's silly, because the small percentage of people that make it in this business are all doing the exact same thing. And it's really simple. It's just lead generation plus lead follow-up equals business every single time. So the 85% of the people, or whatever it is, that may not make it, they're just not doing lead generation, lead follow-up, and that's it. So door knocking, that's how I built my business. And it was just about getting a database, following up with that database until it started to kick out deals. And it's worked out quite well. So yeah, as they say, I think it's a bold law. It's simple but not easy. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's a pretty simple business once you get those two things down: lead gen and lead follow up. So we're gonna jump into it. We're gonna talk about writing and receiving offers today. So let's kind of just jump right into it. Let's see here. And really, actually quickly before I do that, does anybody have any specific questions already right off the bat that you kind of came here with that you want to make sure that I cover, just so I make sure I hit those? Otherwise, you can ask any questions you have anytime throughout. So, all right, let's get into it. If I can here. There we go. So we're going to talk about the offer process here first. So kind of the overview of the offer process is obviously you get to the point to where your buyer finds the property that they really like and they're ready to write that offer. And then it kicks it back to the seller. So the seller has 3 responses that they can have. Obviously, they can counter the offer, which is where you end up in negotiations. And that can go back and forth. It doesn't have to be a counter. It is what it is. You might counter back. I've been in counters where it just goes back and back and back and back multiple times, and sometimes over silly stuff, and you just kind of have to, you have to coach your people through it and help them make a decision each time. And then you've got the accept the offer. So that just starts the contract to close process. That's when you open escrow. And that's what we're always shooting for. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how can we make sure that the offers that we're sending have the best chance of just getting accepted outright. And there are a lot of different things that you can do to make sure that you're not sending an offer that may have just some silly things that you didn't need to, it might be things that your buyers would have absolutely been willing to do. And, they didn't ask the right questions, or you didn't ask the right questions to that agent, and they had to counter you. Or maybe somebody else tailored their offer so perfectly that it was something silly that you lost the house over, and that's really not what you want. So you want to always be shooting to get your offer accepted the first time, obviously, and then finally rejecting the offer. Typically, I don't see a lot of offers just get outright rejected if it's just a single offer. Obviously, if it's a multiple offer situation and you counter one or just a few of them or whatever it may be, at that point you would be rejecting offers. But in the case of, let's say, just one offer comes in, unless it's just an absolutely horrible low ball and just makes absolutely no sense, typically I coach my clients to at least counter those offers, even if it's just countering it back at full asking price or whatever it may be. Typically when it's just one offer on the table and it's just outright rejected without a counter, that's usually a case where, at least in my experience, that it's just not going to be an offer that's going to work no matter what. Sometimes I'll get an FHA offer on a home that might be a condo, and I know that it's not on the FHA list, and that offer is just never going to work. So the cases like that, but typically you want to at least try and get a counter out. All right, I'm not sure why there we go. Okay, so next step is preparing the offer. So, a little preparation goes a really long way here. And basically it's just it's just communication. So basically I would say about every time I get a multiple offer situation, I can't even think of a single time that I haven't had in a multiple offer situation and one or two of the offers don't come in as a complete surprise. And I don't remember a single time, and I don't think there has been a single time in my career that have had or coached my seller to accept those offers, because typically they're just poorly written. And it's the offer that I might have a deadline of 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, and then all of a sudden this offer comes in at 2:59 p.m. or even just after the deadline or whatever it may be, and I've never spoken with that agent. I don't know who they are. I don't know anything about their client. I can look through their offer and tell that they barely tried. Everything is just kind of standard terms, and they just kind of threw it out there. They had no idea they were in a multiple offer situation, so they didn't know what kind of foot they needed to put forward in the first place. And there might be a lot of just really simple things that they could have changed that I would have told them about had they given me a call. So typically those offers, those surprise offers, are not the one that I would ever coach my client to take. And I don't think I've ever had them take one. So things to do before you write the offer, and you've got your checklist, I believe, in the materials. If not, I can make sure that you guys get those. You can kind of see it there on the screen, some of the main things. You want to make sure that you get the pre-approval for the lender. You should have this before you're even showing homes. My rule of thumb with the pre-approval, typically, when I'm meeting with a buyer and I'm doing that buyer appointment, I will either let them know, and I typically do let them know ahead of that appointment that that's going to be the next step. And so it will give us more direction when we're in that buyer appointment as far as what they can afford. And so I also let them know that in the case that they wanted to write an offer immediately, or something that came up and that perfect house was there, you just don't want to miss out on it based on not having a pre-approval that you could have easily gotten already. So that said, working with buyers, it's a lot of work. It's fun, but it is a lot of work, and it can be a real time suck if you show a buyer 10, 15 houses and then find out that they can't afford any of them. So making sure that your buyers are pre-approved ahead of time. If I don't get them pre-approved prior to that initial appointment, I will ask them to get pre-approved next, and I won't show more than one house before they do. So I'll show one house as kind of like a trial sometimes, just to kind of show them that I do know what I'm talking about and all of that. I'll walk them through and share little things that I would look for in a home and all of that, but I won't continue to show homes until they have that pre-approval. Next will be a market analysis. You want to do that CMA with them just like you would do for a seller, especially in a market like we're in right now, where sometimes they sell for under, sometimes they sell, and it's all markets, but sometimes in this market, you can see things sell drastically under, drastically over, and sometimes they're priced right. You just don't know until you write that market analysis or create that market analysis. Back a couple of years ago, almost every house was selling for $900,000. listing for like $900,000 and then selling for, you know, $1.2 million. So if you didn't do that CMA, you would absolutely never know the actual value of that property. Before I go on, I can't see you guys right now just because I need to be able to see my screen. Does anybody have any questions at this point? All right. Okay, so reviewing tax records. When it talks about that, you can get this through the MLS through Realist. And so if you don't know what that is, let me know after and I can show you that. But you're just going to get there from the main screen of the MLS, and it's going to pull up all of the information on the home as the tax records have it. So you'll know who is on title for the most part, unless something was very recently changed. You're going to have, you know, the assessor's parcel number, tax. You're going to have all that stuff that you need to actually put onto the offer through the MLS, including if you click on the listing on the hyperlink from Realist, it'll actually take you to the MLS listing of the property, and then you can get all of the agent information and all of that as well. One quick tip before I forget about that. Always put the agent, if you're writing an offer on a home, make sure you put the buyer's agent's information on that offer. There's nothing more annoying than having 5 offers come through and you realize, okay, this is the one I think that they're gonna take. And you go to set up signatures and all that, and you realize that your name isn't anywhere on the contract. You've got to go back and do confirmation of agency because you can't accept a contract that doesn't have your information on it in the first place. But if you leave out silly things like their broker's number or things like that, you can invalidate a contract and also cause a lot more work for the listing agent. So make sure that you're getting that listing agent's information, you're actually putting that onto the offer. And then just ensuring the property is still available. Obviously, you want to do that. I've gotten offers that are thrown out while my clients are currently accepting another offer or encounters already. So what I do is before I'm writing an offer, I get the pre-approval. I ask them, the buyer, I'm always going to ask them for a letter to the seller. And that is really, really important. And I hear agents all the time say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't actually work. It works a lot. There are 2 transactions I've done in the last 6 months that I know that we got basically because we knew enough about the seller to be able to cater the buyer's offer to that seller. And they got the house because of it, because there was a connection made. Now, there are some iffy things there as far as if you're working with the seller, should I show them the offers? I'm not going to really go into that too much today. But I will tell you that a lot of agents will say, don't even show them any of the offer letters until they accept an offer. If you're going to show it to them, make sure they see all of the offer letters, not just one, because that's going to make it unfair, and make sure that they understand, hey, I'm going to show these to you. But with that said, you can't make any decisions based on anything that you see in here because that's discriminatory. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to show it to your sellers. And it can set them up for issues as far as discrimination. As the buyer, I'm always going to have my buyer do it because most agents are going to show those letters in that offer presentation. And if I can add a little bit of emotion to it and cause a connection to happen, maybe I don't have the best terms, maybe the price is just a little bit lower, but they fall in love with that letter and they actually accept that offer over the other ones. Happens all the time. So really important. What I tell my buyers to do in order to prepare for that, because they may have to write a few offers before they get into contract on a home, is I tell them to write it in 2 paragraphs. And the way that I have them format it is typically I say, hey, put your picture up at the top and pick the picture that's going to tug on those heartstrings, play to your strengths there. So if it's like, I work with a lot of firefighters and things like that, coming from a paramedic background, I'll say, find the picture of you and your family and you're in your firefighter uniform and all that stuff. And it's things like that that can really help. So whatever you can do in order to put a little bit of emotion into an otherwise very black and white contract, go ahead and do that. And then those 2 paragraphs, the first one is going to be kind of an about us. So this is us, this is our family, this is why we're looking in the area, that kind of a thing. And then that picture at the top and that first paragraph can stay there. Even if they had to write a few offers, they can just keep using that. And then I always say, take that second paragraph and then cater that toward that the other side. So make sure that you're figuring out, if you can, through your agent, what's important to them. And that's a question that you should be asking every single time your buyer might be interested in a home. Find out what's important to them, and then also tell them what's important to you about that property and what you love about it. And make sure that they understand that it's specifically for their property. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten an offer letter, and all of a sudden I realize that it's the wrong address at the top and they're describing a very different house, and that makes that you might as well have not sent an offer, because it probably would have been better than to send the wrong offer letter. So that second paragraph, it would just be something like, hey, when we saw your house, when we walked in the front door, immediately we felt at home. We loved the light that came in through whatever, talk about their home, because that's going to show a lot of care there. Now, you're also going to ask for their proof of funds. And so when you're getting ready to write that offer, you want to make sure that you ask them for the proof of the amount of funds necessary to close based on the offer that they have been, that they wrote. So if they're putting 10% down on a $1 million property, you figure, okay, they're going to be needing about $100,000 plus they're going to need some closing costs funds. So I typically won't share all of the funds if I've got a really wealthy client, especially. I don't want to be like, hey, I know they're going to buy your $1 million property and they're writing a little bit under the asking price, and here's their proof of funds of $3 million. Not necessarily the best look, or it doesn't really give you the best footing for your negotiations there. So typically I'll show about enough money to close the deal based on the offer that they wrote. And I will show some sort of a buffer to cover closing costs, and then a buffer beyond that to cover in the case that there was an appraisal issue. Doesn't mean that my buyers are going to be willing to do it, but at least it sets the tone and just shows the other agent, if there was a problem with the appraisal, at least there's a chance that we could work something out without having to just reduce the price all the way down to whatever that appraisal is. After that, I asked them to get the lender some questions from the lender. I want to know things like, how long is it going to take to close? I want them to find out from the lender, how long is it going to take for them to get their full loan approval? I want to know how long it's going to take them, or typically what they're seeing as far as appraisal timelines, because those two contingencies, appraisal and loan, you can work through the investigation contingency with your client, but the lender is the one that's going to basically dictate how long it's going to take those two things to happen. And so you don't want to be setting up the lender for failure, and then by doing that, you're setting up your buyer for failure as well, and you don't want them to default on a contract just because you didn't speak with the lender. So I always have the buyer ask those questions. And I already have had that conversation with the lender personally. So I'm gonna ask the same questions, but I just wanna make sure that they get the same answers so that we're all on the same page. Because I don't wanna go back to them and say, hey, the lender says, absolutely, we can get it appraised within 5 days. And then it can't get appraised within 5 days, and it looks like I made the decision on their behalf. And so I want them to get that information straight from the horse's mouth, just like I did. So again, just in summary, as far as what you want from them, you want to get their pre-approval, you want to get their letter to the seller, you want to get their proof of funds, and you want to get them to ask the lender the questions in order to write that offer. Now, what I do as far as preparing to write the offer is I want to make sure that I'm asking the right questions, and I'm making sure that I'm finding out what's important to the seller, what is the activity looking like, how many offers are they expecting, are they going to be setting an offer due date. So what I do to prepare is, first thing, I'm going to go back to the MLS listing, and I'm going to look at the agent private remarks. I'm going to read through all of that again, make sure that nothing's changed. I'm going to read through the bio. I'm going to look to make sure that the disclosures are there. If they're not, I might ask about them, but you don't want to ask the agent for disclosures if they clearly wrote that they're already on the MLS. That just shows that you don't care. You're not paying attention. So I'll look all the way through all that and make sure I'm not asking questions that have already been answered. And then I call the agent and I just let them know, hey, I introduce myself. I kind of talk a little bit about my client and say, hey, we saw your house. They absolutely love it. They're looking at the disclosures now. Very good chance that they're going to want to write an offer. So I just wanted to start the dialogue, kind of get an idea from you, what is the seller expecting? Are you thinking about setting an offer due date at this point? Is it something that you're expecting to go over the asking price at this time? Do you have a bunch of disclosure packages out, that kind of a thing? And I'll just kind of talk to them and make sure that I understand what the activity is looking like. Do I need to write an offer right this second? Because they might be, they might have one in hand already, or is there going to be an offer due date that they're considering? And then I'll find out what is important to the seller outside of just price and terms. And as far as price and terms, what's the most important? Because I want to make sure that I can tailor that offer to that if I can. So I always want to play to my buyer's strengths. And so if I know that they are limited as far as their offer price, I want to figure out what terms I can cater to the seller to make it look like at least we're trying. You also want to find out about things like, do they need more time in the home? You know, if they need a full 30 days to close escrow because they need to make that move and they need that much time, then you writing an offer saying, I can close in 21 days might sound like a buyer's strength, but in reality, it's showing that you didn't ask the right questions, and that's going to be a silly counter that you really didn't need to get. Do they need a seller in possession? Do they need a 30-day or 29-day seller in possession after the close of escrow in order to go move and find another property? Is that something that your buyer is willing to do? And is their lender able to make that happen? So that's one little thing that you can sometimes do. Maybe nobody else is willing to give them the extra time. However, when you buy a home, your first payment's not going to be until the following month. So it's sometimes a tool that a buyer can use because they may not be doubling up, and always make sure you check with the lender, but they shouldn't be doubling up on their payment because they'll have their payment for whatever property they're in currently. They'll have this house and they won't have their first payment if they give a 30-day lease after sale until they actually move in. And so if they have the time and they're flexible there, that could trump giving them even a slightly higher price. So make sure that you're asking the right questions. Now, beyond that, you want to make sure that you're just staying in rapport with that agent and you're staying in contact with them, because the more they talk to you and the more that you build rapport, the more comfortable that they're going to be with you. There are a lot of situations where I end up with 5 offers all at the same time. Typically, one of them will be one of those surprise offers. And then about 3 of them will be really good offers, and all 3 of those people have been talking to me the entire time. I feel pretty comfortable with them. And then that other offer might be something that is just as good as those other better offers with the agents that have talked to me, but I don't know anything about those agents. I haven't been able to get a hold of their lenders or anything like that. And so I'm typically not going to push for their offer just because I don't know anything about them. So just a little tip there, just make sure that you're having that dialogue and have it all the way up if they're sending an offer due date until you're writing the offer. And so if you talk to them on Sunday, the offer due date's Tuesday, give them a call on Monday just to check in and see how things are going. Make sure that nothing's changed. They're not looking at offers early or anything like that. And then give them a call again on Tuesday. You know, I'll call a couple of hours before we submit, right before we write up the offer, just to see how things are going, how many offers they have in hand already, and I can then coach my clients as far as how strong do they need to come in. And so that's hugely important. Otherwise, I really don't know, and I might be, I might be completely off base with that offer. Now, when I submit the offer, I'm also going to call them right before I send it and let them know, hey, this is what they're doing. They're comfortable with this, this, and this. This is what the offer is going to look like, and I'm sending it to you right now. If I can do that in person, which we're not really doing right now, I will, because then I can kind of gauge their facial reactions to that, kind of see, okay, did it take them back a little bit? Did they seem like they were excited? Were they smiling when I said the number? Did they look irritated with it? And then I'll just ask them, hey, you have any questions for me? You know, do you think we even stand a chance? That kind of a thing, just to get a better idea. Do I need to go back to my buyer and say, hey, we might need to firm that up a little bit. So make sure you're staying in dialogue the entire time. And then writing the offer. So make sure that you have a checklist, because sometimes you do have to write an offer very, very, very quickly, and you don't want to miss little things. And it happens to the most experienced agents.
Where was this checklist you're referring to?
I'm sorry?
Where is this checklist you're talking about?
I believe it's in the materials. I will ask Laura if we can send that out to everybody on the call today.
Which checklist?
We're talking about the checklist to write the offer. I'm
Okay, so there's in all of your materials, it should be in there, and then also a lot of the materials are in the toolkit, and I'm going to post right now how to get to that stuff in the chat. Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Cool. Thanks, Laura. All right. So, it's good to have, I like to have, I create my own checklist as well, so I can go and make sure that there aren't little things that I'm missing. I hate it when I send an offer out and everything is perfect and we've been in dialogue and they really trust me, and then I just forget something super silly, like confirmation of agency seems to be a big one. people forget to put who's representing who in the transaction, and it's very high up on the contract. It immediately invalidates your offer, and it's just not a good look when you've already felt like, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with this person, but do they know how to write a contract? So making sure that you're having those checklists is huge. So here we go. Here's an example of that if you wanted to screenshot it, but it should be in the materials as well. And I apologize if I'm taking a lot of breaks to drink tea. I'm pretty heavy smoke, as you guys know, so I'm having a little bit of an issue with that today, but I'll get through it. All right, so we're talking about creating an offer in Command. I'm gonna kind of go from this into just showing you where we get them in car forms. We have Command classes that Renee does. I would highly recommend going to it. You can learn how to link your Command with zip forms and all that stuff. But for now, I'm just going to really quickly, I'm going to jump out of the slideshow and I'm just going to show you, in case you haven't seen it. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Most of you probably have, but where those are. So if you're going to go to car.org, you are a member. If you haven't already set that up, just make sure that you do that, because this is where our contracts come from. And so you'll click on access transactions. You'll sign into that. And typically what I do if I'm creating it, this is kind of, a down and dirty way of doing this, but if I'm creating it directly in zip form, if I can get this to load. Okay, well. All right. So if I'm starting a new transaction, I'll put new. You're going to put your purchase or offer. And I'll enter the property. Typically in this, I just enter the buyer's name, just because I don't know how many offers I'm gonna have to write for them, especially if they have a low down payment or there's gonna be some difficulty there. Once you do that, you can check the box for your templates.
We're not seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not seeing my screen. Can you see it now?
No.
I see your screen.
I see your screen too.
Okay, so which one are you looking at right now? Are you looking just at the zip form webpage, or are you looking at the one with the transaction information, property address, and all that?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
I'm seeing create the offer in Command.
Okay, let's see here. That's not what I want. All right, I'm gonna stop the share here really quick, and I'm gonna just reshare it. See if that'll work. Okay, what are you looking at now?
Transaction information.
We see
Okay.
the zip forms.
Okay, are you seeing the one with the transaction information, and
Yeah.
then you should see me clicking on name?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And if you're not, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why some people would see it and some people wouldn't, but just definitely, if you have a question about it, ask me after and I'll walk you through it. But so let's just say I'm gonna put sample buyer, residential. You can create your templates here again. I'm not gonna click on anything too crazy there. So once you do that, then it's going to take you to your screen, and you can now you can add any documents that you need. So I've got all of this stuff already in here. If you don't, the first thing I'm going to add is just going to be the cover sheet and the purchase agreement. So just one thing you want to make sure you do is you fill out your cover sheet first. And you can put all the information that you have into this cover sheet, and then that's just going to end up it's going to just make every document that you create in zip forms, it's going to have that same information. Always double check that something didn't get left off, but this should auto populate pretty much everything else you need from that point on. So you're going to have at least your cover sheet and your purchase agreement. Does anybody have any questions about how to get into zip forms and where those contracts are?
Do you use MLS Connect?
I personally am not at this point, no. I don't really, I start the main transactions, but then I basically, my transaction coordinator handles a lot of it for me, to be honest.
I use it. It's very useful because you have all the listing agents information. Everything is accurate. APN, everything is there. It's so
Gotcha.
easy.
Yeah, I would definitely would like to look into that. I'll have to check that one out. I typically have just between the MLS page, the listing for the property, I'll take most of the information directly off of that. And then anything that I don't have there, I can get through Realist. But typically you should have pretty much all of that APN, all of that stuff should be on the listing. But it's always good to double check for sure. Okay, let me see. Let me get back into the PowerPoint here. There's one more thing I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint for in a little bit, but let's see. Where is my PowerPoint? Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to reshare the right screen here. Okay, actually that's not the right one. That's what I want. Okay, let me jump back into this here. Okay. Oh no, I didn't want that. Sorry guys. All right, here we go. So offer writing guidelines, we kind of talked a little bit about that. You're seeing the PowerPoint again, correct? Not all my notes.
We see your text.
Oh, you see all my notes now too?
No.
Yeah, your texts are showing up.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Sorry guys. This is I've never had an issue with this before. Well, I'm going to figure this out, I promise. Okay. All right, here we go. Now you should see the PowerPoint. Is it showing up now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let me get back into this and if I can find the right screen again. The most trouble I think I've ever had with this before. Okay, so here's just a cover letter template. These are great to use. At the end of the class, I'll quickly run you through what my email looks like when I present everything. But this is a really great thing to have. Your buyer writes a letter from their perspective, but I always like to have my my own perspective. So I talk a little bit about them, how long I've been working with them, how much they love the house, and how committed we are to a smooth transaction, all of that. And that's going to go on my letter to them. And typically, the way I'm doing it right now is it's just in the email, it's the body of the email, and then I copy and paste it as a PDF. And I deliver that as the top attachment on that offer email. All right, so we're gonna skip over some of the role play stuff. That's gonna be kind of difficult today. We talked a little bit about presenting the offer. Again, notify the listing agent of the incoming offer. Don't just send it to them blindly. Send the offer, set a deadline. In the offer, you're gonna have the ability to either go with a standard 3 days, or you can shorten that or lengthen it depending. So the only times I really lengthen it is if it's, you might have 2 or 3 people that are selling the home together. They might live in completely different states or whatever it may be. And so it might take longer to get everybody to talk about it and go over it. But typically it's either left standard, or in the case that I know that my offer is just probably going to be by far the best or the highest or whatever it may be, I'll sometimes shorten it. The risk that you run when you shorten the offer expiration date is just putting a bad taste in the seller's mouth. So you got to be careful with that, because you don't want to make them feel pressured, and that feeling of pressure is not going to give you a connection that you would want. So you want to make sure that if you do shorten it, you just kind of let them know why. It does make sense to shorten it in the case that, let's say, especially, if you're the first offer in, there's no offer due date at this point, you know that there are other people circling and you're going to write a really strong offer. in those cases, if I know that the agent's okay with it and they can present pretty quickly, I'll shorten it to like 24 hours or something like that. Okay, and then obviously consult with your buyer when the seller responds. Okay, we're gonna skip over that. All right, so representing the seller. So on the other side of the transaction, you want to gather information about the buyer. So I'm going to go over a spreadsheet that I use, and if anybody's interested in it, I can certainly email it, or I can get that to Renee. I'm sure she can email everybody on the list here. But I have a spreadsheet set up so that I can put all of the information that I gather about each offer, all of the offer details, and as much as I can find out about that buyer, I will put into that spreadsheet. And because I have the spreadsheet, I never forget to look for any information, because the last thing you want to do is go through all of the offers. Maybe you end up with 10 of them and there's one that looks really, really great and you accept it, or your client accepts it, and all of a sudden you realize, shoot, that offer didn't come with signed disclosures like everyone else did. And then as soon as you accept that offer and you're in contract, well, that sometimes will basically take, the urgency is going to be less on the side of the buyer and their agent, because at this point, they don't need to make a great impression anymore. Now, it sucks when that happens. You really want to be the agent that's going to be on top of things and make sure that you're getting those things done quickly. However, a lot of times once they're in contract and they're like, okay, well, I've got it now. Sometimes the communication and sometimes the rate at which things get done slows down. So you don't want to miss those things if you don't have to. So creating a spreadsheet for that is super important. And then obviously present the offer to your client and then respond. So same thing you're going to have in the materials, which will make sure that you have checklists for reviewing the offers. But again, I'll also give you my spreadsheet and I'll show it to you at the end. I don't want to jump back out of this PowerPoint right now because I don't know why I'm having so many issues with that today. So anyways, you've notified the seller, you're going to update the CMA. So you're going to do another CMA with the seller, just like the buyer's going to do. So the buyer's going to do the CMA to find out what the home is actually worth. And the seller is going to do a CMA again. You did it at the beginning, but at this point it could be, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days later. And so you want to make sure that you run the comps again, because in the time that you were on the market, if you've got 5 new closings that all show that the property is worth less than it was when you originally took the listing, then those offers might make sense based on the current market. So making sure that you're doing an updated CMA is important. And then obviously present the offer, price, repairs, buyer motivation, contingencies. I actually, especially now with Zoom, share the spreadsheet with my client so that we can look at it together, and I kind of walk them through it and explain it to them. Typically what I'll do if I know that on that spreadsheet, because you're kind of letting the cat out of the bag there a little bit, if you do that, all of a sudden sometimes they see an offer that's significantly higher than other ones and they get really excited about it. So if I know something like that's going to be the case, I'll prep them for that first and let them know, hey, some of these offers are really high, but they come with some serious strings that might not make them the right offer for you to take. So just know that before we jump into the spreadsheet. And sometimes I'll just let them know, the offers range from this and this with varying terms. Let's take a look. So, and then obviously the decision, counter, accept, or reject, which can sometimes go back and forth quite a few times. With responding to the offer, you reach a decision, you counter again, you're in negotiations, accepting, contract close, rejects. And again, with this rejection of an offer, I've had this happen before where it just takes more negotiation. I had one recently where the seller, I think we came in $170,000 under the asking price. It was under, and I remember the agent just called me back right after presenting and said, they're rejecting your offer, they're not going to counter. And I'm sitting there just like, this is a really expensive house, $170,000 down, under when it's been on the market, as long as it's been on the market, that deserves at least a counter. Excuse me. And so I just had to kind of coach that agent through it. She was a little bit newer and just kind of kept letting her know, listen, you just go back to them and at least mention this and see what they have to say. If we can just get a counter, that would be huge. We didn't say that this was our ending point. It's kind of a starting point. So let's see if we can still put something together here. And it ended up working. In fact, for some reason, they ended up just accepting our offer as is. I'm not sure what was going on there. But, you know, sometimes no doesn't mean no. You just need to kind of find out why. So ask questions. You know, why is it that they didn't want to, you know, give us a counter? Sometimes you have to ask the same question in different ways 2 or 3 different times to really get to the root of the issue. And sometimes you need to ask the question enough times to where they don't really understand exactly why the offer was rejected. And then they ask their client a couple of times until they get to the root of the issue. And then sometimes it's something that can be easily taken care of. So don't just assume that no means no. Okay, so before I'm gonna quickly from here, I'm gonna jump into my spreadsheet, things that I look at when I am reviewing offers and before I even show them to my client. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions or any comments or anything about what we talked about so far?
Can you go over how to do the CMA?
Yeah, I'll quickly talk about it for just a minute. That's a whole nother class, to be honest. And so it's not something that we would have time to do really today. That would probably take like a whole nother like 45 minutes to an hour class. But do you mean how to do a CMA as in on the MLS, or can you explain the question a little bit?
Or like the best way to do a CMA, because I have a lot of coworkers and they will ask me like, oh, you know, this property lists for this much. Like, what price do you think it's going to sell for?
Right. Gotcha. I mean, again, with the CMA, as always, you're going to want to find properties that are as close in, you know, in the specs as you can. So as close on paper. So you want to find, you know, if it's a 1,500 square foot home, typically I'll look for homes that are between 1,300 and 1,700 square feet, with similar lot sizes, similar age ranges. If it's something that's like, you know, built in the early 80s, like late 70s, something like that, typically those homes all the way back to the 50s are, you know, I can kind of lump those together because they've probably been remodeled and stuff at that point. But the newer homes, let's say built in 2010, things like that, typically I'll remove those because it's just very different. So you're wanting to find the homes, again, that are just as similar as you possibly can get them. And I start very, 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 very similar as far as what I'm writing into the criteria. And then as let's say I have all of the homes I need to create an an accurate CMA. So I've got a solid 3 solds that are similar, maybe 3 pendings, a few active so they can see the competition. If not, let's say I have 0 solds or 1, what I'll typically do is I will go back another month or 2 if the market hasn't changed too much, and see if that pulls something up. And if that doesn't work, then I'll start to just expand the criteria a little bit. I might add some of the newer homes in there. I might look at homes that are 1,250 square feet as opposed to a 1,300 square foot minimum. And then it's all about just making sure that you're making those adjustments, which again is another class that it would take a little bit longer to go over. But you know, if I'm looking at a 1,300 square foot home in a neighborhood, and there is also another 1,300 square foot home that's a 4-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, you know, making little adjustments. If you know the neighborhood, that you can say, you know, the 4 bedrooms are selling for about $25,000, $30,000 more. So you make those little adjustments there. Typically when I'm going over the CMA, what I do is I actually just I take them straight to the MLS, to be honest. And I just have just the ones that I want them to see. I've gotten rid of everything else. One way I do this is I just save all the MLS numbers for the homes that I want to show them, in the case that I can't just leave the screen up. And I'll just put those MLS numbers into that criteria page. They'll all pop up, and I take them through one by one. And so I just let them know, you know, I spend, again, I spend a lot of time on the homes that are very, very similar, and I spend less amount of time on the homes that are not. And so I'm kind of coaching them in the right direction without telling them what to do. So if I see a home that's far nicer than the home that they're writing an offer on, or if it's a seller, if I'm showing them a home that's far nicer than theirs, I won't say that, but I'll say something like, hey, you know, this is going to be the high comp. This is for homes that are pretty much completely remodeled, brand new. They've probably put a couple $100,000 into it. And maybe it might not have made sense for them to do that. They might not even get all that money back, but that's why it's selling for what it is. And I'll kind of show them, you can see the bathrooms are completely remodeled, kitchen's completely remodeled. And I'll kind of keep talking like that, show them a few pictures. boom, next one. And then as I get to the homes that are very, very similar to theirs, I spend more time, and I can say, like, you know, kind of see how your house is similar with this one as far as how the bedrooms laid, you know, set up, the floors, the kitchen, all that stuff. I spend a lot more time on it. And then once I get to the homes that are not nearly as nice, then I can do the opposite of what I did with the nicer homes. And I can just let them know, hey, obviously your home is in a far different ballpark than these. You can see that you've got more, more of a, you know, a larger lot. You've got more bedrooms, more bathrooms. It's nicer. It's been taken care of better. So these aren't really great comps. And so I kind of, again, that's the way I do it, is I'm kind of brushing over the super crazy comps and talking about why they sell for exorbitant amounts of money, spend a lot of time on the comps that they need to be really focusing in on, and then I kind of taper off and as I'm getting past that. And so what that does is, at that point, now they realize, okay, you know, this is probably where we're going to be listing, is somewhere in this range with these sold properties. And then I just ask them, you know, based on what we're seeing here with these current comparables, where do you think you should be listing your property in this market? And I'll tell you, a lot of the times they give me the right answer, because you don't want to look like you're irresponsible or not paying attention or uneducated by saying, yeah, but I still think that we can get, you know, $200,000 more. And we just look at the comp that got that, and that's just not going to happen. And so typically what they'll do is they'll actually give me the correct number. And I like that, because now they've told me what they should be listing their house for. I didn't tell them what they should be listing their house for. If I have to, I will. But in reality, if they can tell me, it works a whole lot better, because in the case that we can't get that value, it wasn't me that coached them to do the wrong thing, essentially. So you want to make sure that they are okay with, and, you know, even give you that information.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Of course. All right. So I'm going to kind of jump into that Excel spreadsheet here really quick, and hopefully I don't have as many issues sharing my screen this time. Let's see here. Where did I put it? Here it is. Okay. Sorry, my computer is running really slowly today. There we go. All right. Get back to my Zoom. All right, let me share this screen here. Okay, so you should be seeing my Excel spreadsheet now. You guys seen it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is what I go over when I'm plugging in the information for every single offer. So it makes it easy. It's pretty much in order as far as what I'm looking at as the offer's coming in, which makes it easy. I don't have to jump around the contract like that. So first I put the agent name, just so I can, you know, I've probably talked to most of them. And so I put their name in there. I'm going to put it in regardless, but at least I can be like, hey, okay, so this agent, his name's Marcel. We've been talking for about 2 or 3 days. He's been really, really on top of things. So I'll put their name there, close of escrow, obviously. I put the purchase price. I put the deposit and the time frame for the deposit. So I'll put the in percentage form. I really don't care what the deposit is, as long as it's 3%. And that's going to change depending on where you are. So don't just take that as, you know, that's everywhere. I've worked in areas that it's 1.5%, 2%, or whatever it is. So just know what the customary deposit is in the market that you're working in. It's, you know, you don't have to put that. If your buyer can't do it, then they can't do it. But typically as a listing agent, if I see something less than 3%, I start to wonder about how committed they are to the property and actually closing it. So it's a little bit of a red flag. It's not an automatic they're out, but it is a red flag. So I put the percentage there, and I put the time frame. Did they just leave it standard as within 3 business days of acceptance? Typically, you know, a stronger offer and an agent that is, you know, has a lot of experience and understands what it's going to take to get their offer accepted. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll put within 1 business day of acceptance. Obviously you want to put within 1 business day, because you don't want to set them up on a contract that it's basically says that they get their deposit in on a weekend. It's just not possible. So within 1 business day of acceptance. You don't like to sit there waiting for your deposit. If it's a non-contingent offer, especially, it's scary for the seller, because if they don't put their deposit in, regardless of whether or not they were non-contingent, you're probably never getting anything. because it was never in escrow in the first place. So there's nothing to release. So if they have 5 or 6 offers, they all come in on a Thursday, and you're trying to accept it on Thursday so that you can get the deposit in on Friday. An offer where they're gonna, if it's non-contingent and they're gonna put the deposit in on Friday, you're not gonna have to wait the entire weekend to make sure that that actually goes in to escrow. That's gonna be a huge thing for the seller, and something that I find important enough to counter a lot of the time. With countering, I'm not going to go on a huge tangent here, but one thing that I'll just kind of quickly bring up is don't be afraid to counter. When I first got into business, I was always thinking, well, if you counter it, you kill the deal. If you're countering something that's going to be, not giving them anything, or it's offensive or whatever, then maybe you might kill the deal. But in reality, if it's small little things like this, if they're not willing to sign a counter for something really small or simple, there was a good chance that they probably weren't going to perform on the contract in the first place. And I'd rather flush that out while I've got 13 other people on the table, or 2 other people, or whatever it may be. So don't be afraid to counter. Yeah, it kills the contract, but make sure that they're still, that they're absolutely committed. Sorry, losing my voice here a little bit. Down payment, obviously, if you've got a 50% down payment, or it's all cash or whatever that may be, that's going to be a lot better than if they're putting down 3% or whatever it is. With the down payment, though, things that I look at is if they're putting down, let's say 15%, and they have very little cash, I want to be able to talk to the lender when I'm reviewing things with him and their agent, and say, hey, in the case that there is an appraisal issue, can they lower their down payment a little bit to have more cash? I'm working through that right now with one of my transactions. The buyer wrote a non-contingent offer, probably shouldn't have. The property did not appraise, and now they're kind of scrambling to redo their loan in order to close on that property. So making sure that they can do that is big, because if they don't have the cash to actually make it happen, and they can't lower their down payment, and they wrote a non-contingent offer, I'm not in the business of trying to go after people's deposits, and it's not just as cut and dry as it sounds. And so I want to make sure that they at least have the possibility of performing on that contract. Loan type, I'll put FHA versus VA versus conventional and all that stuff like that's important. I'm not going to go into it a lot right now because we're running out of time. But if it's an FHA loan, again, like I said earlier, and they're trying to offer on a condo that's not approved as something that's loanable for FHA, then that's going to be an issue. If it's a VA loan, it's something to know. I love working with VA buyers. However, with a VA buyer, it comes with a special VA appraisal. They're going to ask for more things in the home to be fixed than you normally would have to deal with, more than likely. They're going to make you fix all the termite stuff and all that too. So it's just probably not going to be as strong as an offer that came in conventional with 20% down. Capped interest rate, I put this is on the first page of the contract. Agents will occasionally cap the interest rate that their buyer's willing to pay, which is just basically expanding on the loan contingency. And that is, it's just an extra contingency. So, I do it for my buyers, but I love it when the agent on the other side does not cap it for their buyer when they're offering on a house that my client is selling. Pre-approval and proof of funds is what it is. I just make sure, again, that they have the proof of funds to not only cover their down payment, but that there is a buffer there, especially if they're non-contingent. Appraisal contingency, all of these things have standard timelines in the contract, as most of you know. However, in a competitive situation, most of these things can be tightened up. Even if you can only tighten it up 2 days, that shows that you're trying. If it's completely standard, there are 5 other offers on the table and you didn't change anything at all, that's going to tell me that they don't really want the house that badly. They're just kind of throwing this out there. Or possibly the agent really doesn't know how to get things done in the current market, and that makes me nervous too. You got obviously your loan contingency on sale of property. These are things you need to make sure you don't miss, and that's why I have the Excel spreadsheet. You might look through everything and say, hey, this is a non-contingent offer, and then miss the fact that it is, however, contingent for the life of the entire agreement on them selling another property. And who knows if that's going to sell, who knows if they're priced right or whatever. I get them done. I do them all the time, but you definitely want to look into it. Under other terms, I'll look and see, are they asking for anything kind of weird? Are they writing? Sometimes you'll see people write things in that, you know, they reserve the right to assign a contract during the contract period. Things like that are going to make you really want to ask more questions. That one I'm not going to go into, but if you ever do see that, that the buyer reserves the right to assign the contract, that is a huge red flag. And it's usually an investor, and a lot of times those don't end up closing. So be careful with those. Breakdown of costs, I just put down whether or not they're standard, customary for the area, and I'll put down any deviations from that. So if they are asking, let's say the seller to pay for, let's say the buyer's offering to pay for the escrow fee. I want to verify that they understand what they're doing there, you know, things like that. Or if they're asking my seller to pay for things that normally a seller wouldn't pay for, it would be a buyer cost. I want to find out if the buyer is really strapped for money, or in the case that they just maybe didn't know the area, they were an out of area agent writing it kind of similar to what they were doing. I can usually get those things fixed, have them change it to the customs here, and it saves my seller money. If they were doing it on purpose, you know, that's a negotiation thing. But if it was just, oh, I didn't realize that, then you could save your seller a few $1,000s quickly right there. Warranty, who pays? It's a little thing, but I still want to go over it. Items included and excluded. Are they asking for the refrigerator? Are they asking for the washer and dryer or anything else? Is there anything there that the seller was really hoping to leave, and they're asking to move it? Are they asking to do demo of like a shed in the back or something like that? If there are 5 offers on the table and my seller doesn't want to do it, I might counter that out or have them counter that out. Do they intend to occupy the property? You cannot discriminate even based on whether or not it's a rental or anything like that. But I still want to know so that I'm making sure that they're doing everything correctly on the lending side. I've had it to where someone's buying it as a rental and the lender didn't even realize that it was an investment property, and it threw everything off because they had to completely redo the loan side. Investigation contingency, obviously, if it's competitive, if you can shorten it, great. If not, it is what it is. I'll put liquidated damages and mediation. Did they initial that? If they did not initial that and my client is wanting to initial that, it's not a valid contract, has to be initialed on both sides. Did they add the agent for delivery? Did they, on the page 9 of the contract, did they put their name down, or am I going to have to get the last step of an accepted of the contract is delivery. If they did not put themselves down, then I had to technically go search out their buyer and deliver it to them or their email address. So I just asked that the agent puts themselves there. When is the expiration? Is it something that we got to act on quickly? Are the disclosures signed? I'll go through all of them. If I'm asking for the disclosures to be signed ahead of time, which I highly recommend, especially in multiple offer situations, did they get them done? And if they didn't, what were those ones that they missed? And I definitely want to have those big ones like the seller property questionnaire, transfer disclosure statement, things like that signed. Other notes, so I'll put things here like, you know, with my conversation with the agent, how did that go? Were there any red flags, anything like that? Did they include a letter to the seller? And that's it. So that's what my Excel spreadsheet looks like. If you've got 15 offers, it really helps that you can go through and just plug these numbers in, plug these notes in, and then gives you the ability to quickly show it to the seller. You still have to go over the contracts with them, but then I can, at the end of that presentation, I've got this there for them, and I can just show them, okay, this is the summary of what we were just looking for, just to make it a little bit easier. And that's it for that. So any questions at all?
No, that's a great system, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'll make sure that I'll ask Renee to get that sent out to everybody that was on here. And yeah, if anybody has any questions about anything that we went over today or anything that I didn't really expand on, you can get a hold of me by my email address or phone number. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. So there's my email address. And my phone number. So if I can help out in any way, absolutely reach out. I'd love to. Otherwise, if nobody has any other questions, I'll let you guys go.
So you're going to send that out to Renee?
Yes, I'm going to email it to Renee. And then I'm guessing Laura, if Renee can get this emailed out. I have an Excel spreadsheet I'd like to send everybody.
Hold on just a sec.
Yeah.
Let me turn down my other thing.
Oh,
I got too many things going on at once. What's the question?
so we were just kind of going over my Excel spreadsheet and just wanted to send that out just so that people can have like just at least a template for plugging in offer terms and all that
If
stuff.
I get you the people who attended, can you email it to them? If I
Absolutely.
get you that list? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll get you
that's
that
perfect.
list here in just a few minutes and then you can send it out to them. Okay?
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, thank
All
you so
right.
much for being here,
Thank you,
guys.
Brian.
And
Thank you so
absolutely
much,
feel free to
Brian.
reach out anytime. No problem. All right,
Have
everybody,
a good
take
day,
care.
you guys.
Thank you.
No problem. Bye, guys.
Bye.